Welcome to the Deep Dive here on PodX Studio. I'm your guide, and our mission today is, well, it's to cut through the noise, unearth those truly fascinating insights, and present them in a way that's not just accessible, but genuinely captivating. We're really here to make being well-informed feel less like work and more like an exciting exploration. Today we're embarking on a really pivotal historical journey. We're going to navigate the foundational aspects of modern Indian history, focusing specifically on the very first encounters with European powers. So if this era is new to you, get ready to be drawn into a narrative that weaves together, audacious voyages, fierce rivalries, and moments that would forever reshape a continent. Take a moment to imagine. A world before instant communication, a time when the allure of exotic spices, shimmering gold, and, pure, unadulterated glory beckoned across vast, unexplored oceans. This is the story of how European powers first navigated their way into India, setting in motion events that would irrevocably change its landscape, its destiny, and its very fabric.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to truly grasp that monumental shift, we first need to set the historical stage, right? What did India look like in the early 16th century?
It was a complex mosaic of power. Definitely not an empty canvas waiting to be painted on. In the north, you saw a politically fragmented landscape. Think smaller regional powers, not one big unifying empire.
Okay, so no single dominant force there.
Exactly. And down in the Deccan, the Bahmani kingdom, which had been pretty formidable, was, it was in decline. It was splintering into smaller independent states. This internal disunity, both north and south, is sort of inadvertently created a power vacuum, a ripe environment for external forces to step in.
Interesting. And what about from the sea? Any major players already dominating?
That's a key point. What's often overlooked is the surprising absence of a major challenge from the east. Chinese navigation, which had been incredibly robust centuries earlier, huge fleets, had been largely curtailed.
Imperial decrees, basically. Political decisions back in China limited their maritime reach, effectively removing a powerful potential player from the Indian Ocean. That left a void. And the Arab merchants, who had dominated the spice trade for ages, they were skilled, definitely established, but they lacked the kind of unified organization, the state backing, that the Europeans would bring.
So they were more like independent traders.
Pretty much. Less centralized, you could say. Compared to the coming European companies, their disunity cleared a path. And then, crucially, the Portuguese arrived with a game changer.
Which was?
Cannons, mounted directly on their ships. This wasn't just a minor upgrade, it was a revolution at sea. It shattered the old rules of naval combat.
Turning sea battles into artillery duels, essentially.
Precisely. It gave them an almost unfair advantage. So when we ask why the European push happened then, it was this confluence. The lure of spices, the quest for gold, and this powerful zeal for glory and religious expansion.
Got it. So let's dive into those pioneers, the Portuguese. We have to start with Pedro Alvares Cabral, right? He arrives in 1500, and his voyage had that interesting detour Brazil. A whole other story there.
A very significant footnote, yes. But his objective in India was clear. Trade. Pepper, spices, the really valuable stuff. He initially tried the diplomatic route, negotiated, and actually set up a factory in Calicut. Seemed straightforward, peaceful even.
But knowing history, peaceful starts often don't stay peaceful for long. So let's unpack this. What happened when this attempt at peaceful trade hit a wall?
You're right to be skeptical. The calm was very short-lived. And the wall it hit was violent. The local population in Calicut, likely stirred up by rival Arab merchants who saw their monopoly threatened, attacked the Portuguese factory.
It's a direct attack.
Oh, yes. A brutal violation of their agreement. Over 50 Portuguese were killed. Cabral's response, it wasn't diplomacy, it was swift, brutal retaliation.
Understandable outrage, I guess, but what did he do?
He went big. Seized 10 Arab merchant ships in the harbor, killed about 600 crew members, took their cargo, and then burned the ships. A chilling message.
Wow, just burned them.
Burned them to the waterline. And he wasn't done. He ordered his ships to bombard Calicut for an entire day. You can imagine the terror and outrage that caused.
A massive escalation.
Yeah.
But did it work? Did he get his trade agreement back?
Not in Calicut, not immediately. The relationship there was poisoned. But Cabral showed some strategic sense. He pivoted. He forged advantageous treaties with rulers in nearby Cochin and Cananore instead.
Smart. Cut his losses and found friendlier ports.
Exactly, laying the groundwork away from the immediate conflict.
And then Vasco da Gama returns in 1501 for his second voyage. What was the situation like then?
Well, the ruler in Calicut, maybe having learned a harsh lesson from Cabral, seemed a bit more willing to talk treaty. But Gama came in strong, maybe too strong.
How so?
He made this incredibly aggressive demand: expel all Muslims, specifically the Arab merchants, from Calicut.
Expel all Muslims.
Yes,
Sounds
sir.
extreme.
Yeah.
And economically disruptive, surely.
Hugely. The ruler vehemently rejected it, of course. He knew how vital the Arab traders were. Gama's response, predictable by now: bombard the city again.
He just kept pounding them.
And captured local rice vessels, hitting their food supply and trade. Then he went off and set up a trading factory in Cananor.
So Calicut remained hostile, but they established bases elsewhere.
Pretty much. Calicut, Cananor, Cochin, these became the key, if sometimes volatile, Portuguese centers. They expanded, set up more factories in Cochin and Colum.
And this is where the Portuguese king steps in more directly.
Yes, that's a crucial shift. The King of Portugal declared direct royal control over these areas. It wasn't just merchants anymore, it was the crown claiming territory. A move towards empire.
Which leads us to the first viceroy, Francisco de Almeida, appointed in 1505.
Correct. Appointed by King Manuel I for 3 years, and his mandate was incredibly ambitious, very explicit.
What was he tasked with?
Establishing 4 key forts: Angediva Island, Cananor, Cochin, and even Kilwa over in modern-day Tanzania. But it went beyond building forts. His orders were to destroy Muslim trade, seize the strategic choke points: Aden, Hormuz in the Persian Gulf, Malacca and Southeast Asia, the main arteries of the existing spice routes.
Wow. Dismantle the whole network.
Yeah.
Did he face much opposition?
Oh, constantly. The Zamorin of Calicut remained a major adversary, but Almeida had the strategic vision, the famous blue water policy. This is really fascinating.
Blue water policy, what did that entail?
It wasn't just about securing the ocean for their ships. It was about establishing total Portuguese dominance, commercially and militarily, over the entire Indian Ocean. Almeida understood Portugal's weakness, limited manpower back home, so he believed strong naval power was key, more so than big land fortresses needing huge garrisons.
Makes sense. A powerful fleet can control trade routes, project power anywhere.
Exactly. More effective, more efficient, and crucial because they faced a big threat from the Sultan of Egypt, who built a fleet to challenge them in the Red Sea. Despite this, Almeida pushed ahead, conquered Kilwa, built the forts at Angediva, Cochin, Cananor. He was so determined, he refused to leave office until after the Battle of Diu.
A pivotal battle, we'll get to that. But his end was tragic, wasn't it?
Yes, sadly. He died at Table Bay near Cape Town on his way back to Portugal in March 1510, right after securing that major victory.
So when we look at Almeida's strategy, Cabral's force, Gama's demands, this pattern emerges. It really points back to those core motivations you mentioned.
To 3 Gs, yes.
Gold, God, and glory. This is like such a simple framework, but it really captures what drove European exploration and conquest for centuries, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. From around 1400 to 1750, it's the driving force. Gold, the hunt for wealth, spices, slaves, metals, you name it.
Then God, the missionary zeal, spreading Christianity, sometimes quite forcefully.
Very forcefully at times. And glory, that intense rivalry between the European kingdoms, who could build the biggest empire, control the most trade. It was a race.
And it's interesting how those 3 motives sometimes clashed, right? Like the Portuguese focus on conversion, the God part, sometimes alienating the people they needed for the gold part.
That's a brilliant point. That internal tension, that friction between aggressive conversion and pragmatic trade might have been one of the seeds of their eventual decline. It created unnecessary conflict.
Which brings us back to Almeida and those crucial naval battles that tested his blue water policy. First, the Battle of Chal in 1508.
Right. Chal, about 60 kilometers south of Mumbai today. A Portuguese squadron under Almeida's own son, Lourenço, was ambushed.
Ambushed by whom?
A combined fleet, Mamluk Egyptians and the Gujarat Sultanate. It was a disaster for the Portuguese. Lourenço was killed.
His son died. That's harsh.
It was, and it was a Mamluk victory, the first major Portuguese defeat at sea in the Indian Ocean. A real shock to their system.
Especially after they had successfully defended Cananor just the year before.
Exactly. It showed they weren't invincible, and powerful alliances could form against them. Mahmud Bagata of Gujarat, the Egyptian Sultan, the Zamorin, they were a formidable coalition.
But the Portuguese bounced back, didn't they? The Battle of Diu in 1509.
They did, and decisively. February 3rd, 1509, near the port of Diu. This was huge. The lineup was impressive. Portuguese versus the Sultan of Gujarat, Egypt, the Zamorin, and they had support from Venice.
Venice. Why were they involved?
Because the Portuguese were disrupting the traditional spice route that Venice, along with the Arabs, had controlled for centuries via the Red Sea and Persian Gulf. Venice had a lot to lose.
Makes sense. So high-stakes battle, And the outcome?
A decisive Portuguese victory. Monumental. It didn't just win a battle, it cemented their control strategy for the Indian Ocean. It allowed them to completely bypass the old routes and reroute trade around the Cape of Good Hope, gave them a near monopoly for decades. Huge strategic win.
So Biu establishes Portuguese naval supremacy. But it's the next guy, Alfonso de Albuquerque, who really solidifies their land presence, right?
Yeah.
Got
Yeah.
here from 1509 to 1515.
Albuquerque, yes, a truly formidable figure. Under him, they firmly established their mainland hold and achieved undeniable supremacy in the Indian Ocean. He's the one who conquered Goa in 1510, taking it from the Bijapur Sultanate. A masterstroke strategically.
And he abolished sati in Goa. That seems quite progressive for the time.
It was a remarkable step, yes. Abolishing the practice of widow immolation shows a different dimension to his rule. His ambition was vast. Portuguese control stretched from Hormuz in the Persian Gulf all the way to Malacca in Malaya, a true maritime empire.
And Goa became the first Indian territory under European control since Alexander the Great. That's a powerful historical marker.
It really is, almost 2,000 years later. But Albuquerque didn't just conquer. He consolidated control. He introduced the Cartaz system.
The pyramid system you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. Basically, if any other ship, even local Indian or Arab ships, wanted to sail in the Indian Ocean, they had to buy an expensive Portuguese permit, a Cartaz.
A coal booth on the ocean. That's incredibly audacious.
It suffocated independent trade and cemented their control. Plus, he took control of major shipbuilding centers. But we do need to acknowledge the darker side.
Which was?
His trading practices could be predatory, almost piratical at times. And he was known for significant cruelty, especially towards Muslims. Effective, yes, but often brutal.
So why was Goa so important to Albuquerque's strategy? What made it the key?
Oh, it was absolutely central. It wasn't just a port, it was the port. Crucially, it was the main hub for trading Arabian and Persian war horses.
Horses, why were they so important?
Essential for the cavalry of Indian kingdoms, and they could only be unloaded at Goa. This gave the Portuguese immense leverage and income. Its location gave them control over trade in the Arabian Sea and the wider Indian Ocean. And establishing a strong naval base there, it sent a clear message to regional powers. We're here to stay, and we have power.
A deterrent, basically.
Exactly. It signaled caution, discouraged resistance.
Beyond the military and economic, what about the cultural and social impact of Albuquerque's rule? You mentioned sati abolition.
Yes, and he also actively encouraged Portuguese men to marry local women and settle permanently.
Why? To create a local power base.
Precisely. To foster a loyal, permanent Portuguese population that saw India, not Portugal, as home. These settlers became landlords, introduced new roads, irrigation. They also brought new crops, things like cashews and tobacco, completely new to India then, but staples now.
So they weren't just soldiers and traders, they became integrated into the local fabric in some ways.
In places like Goa and Cochin, yes. They were artisans, craftsmen, contributing skills. Many did start seeing India as home. But as I said, the downside was significant. That bitter persecution of Muslims cast a long shadow. Still, he fortified Goa, aiming to boost its commercial importance.
And diplomatically, did he isolate Portugal or build bridges?
He was pragmatic. He developed a surprisingly good relationship with the powerful Vijayanagar Empire in the south.
Why them specifically?
Shared enemy. Both the Portuguese and Vijayanagar were rivals of the Deccan Sultanates. That created common ground. It led to cooperation. The Vijayanagar ruler, Krishna Devaraya, even gifted the Portuguese a fort in 1520. They exchanged embassies, shared intelligence.
And trade flourished too.
Especially the horse trade. Supplying European horses to Vijayanagar's cavalry was very lucrative for the Portuguese and vital for Vijayanagar, a mutually beneficial strategic relationship.
Okay, so after Albuquerque's very impactful time, things slowed down a bit. This vacuum period from 1515 to 1529.
Relatively speaking, yes. It's characterized by less dramatic expansion or strategic shifts. 6 different governors served in that period. Interestingly, Vasco da Gama came back for his 3rd stint as viceroy in 1524, but he died in Cochin soon after arriving.
And Goa's status was formally elevated during this time too.
Yes, in 1526, King John III gave Goa the same legal status as Lisbon. A symbolic but important step, recognizing its centrality.
Then came Nino da Cunha, governor from 1529 to 1538. What were his key moves?
His biggest strategic decision was shifting the official Portuguese headquarters permanently from Cochin to Goa. That cemented Goa's role. He also got involved in Gujarati politics. Bahadur Shah of Gujarat needed help against the Mughals, so he ceded Bassein Island to the Portuguese and promised them a base in Diu.
Expanding their footprint on the west coast again?
Yes, strategically positioning them. Though Bahadur Shah's death in 1537 complicated that alliance, Kuna also pushed for more influence in Bengal, leading to settlements like Hooghly becoming important centers there.
And how was the Portuguese administration structured by this point?
Quite formally. Headed by the viceroy, who had ultimate authority but assisted by a council. And a key figure was the Vedo da Fazenda, basically the finance minister, responsible for revenue, cargoes, dispatching fleets, a crucial role for managing the empire's wealth.
So looking back at this initial phase, why were they, a relatively small European nation, so successful early on? What were the favorable conditions?
Several factors really played into their hands. Firstly, North India, apart from Gujarat, was fragmented. Lots of smaller powers, no single unified resistance. Secondly, the Bahmani kingdom in the Deccan was weakening, breaking up, more fragmentation.
And the lack of a Chinese naval presence.
Crucial. That removed a potential major rival in the Indian Ocean. And the Arab merchants, while established, lacked the unity and state backing of the Portuguese.
And the cannons on ships, the technological edge.
Absolutely fundamental. It allowed them to dominate at sea, project power, and intimidate land-based rulers who weren't equipped for that kind of naval warfare.
So what was the full extent of their occupation at its peak? Where did they establish themselves?
Pretty widespread for an early player. On the west coast, Goa, the whole stretch from Mumbai down to Daman and Diu, plus approaches to Gujarat. Vital areas in the south, key ports like Mangalore, Kannur, Cochin, Calicut, and over on the east coast, Santom near Chennai, Nagapattinam, and Hooghly in Bengal, they had reach.
It really is a paradox, isn't it? First Europeans in, last Europeans out, with Goa only rejoining India in 1961.
A remarkable testament to their initial success and the deep roots they established, even as their wider influence waned over centuries.
But that waning did happen. Their long presence inevitably led to challenges and decline. Let's talk about losing Mughal favor. Why did that happen?
A major factor was their own behavior, specifically acts of piracy. This wasn't just small-time stuff. It directly antagonized the powerful Mughal Empire.
Any specific incidents?
A big one was in 1613. The Portuguese captured and plundered Mughal ships, a huge insult to Emperor Jahangir's authority and prestige.
How did Jahangir react?
He was furious, ordered his official Mukarrab Khan to demand compensation immediately. This really soured the relationship. From then on, it went downhill. By Shah Jahan's reign, any special advantages the Portuguese had enjoyed at the Mughal court were gone. Patience had run out.
And the capture of Hooghly in 1632 seemed like a flashpoint in this conflict. What led up to that?
Well, the Portuguese had settled near Satgun in Bengal, based on an old imperial decree from 1579. They fortified Hooghly, built it up, and trade shifted there. But they started overreaching. They monopolized the salt trade, set up their own custom house, bypassing Mughal authorities, slapped heavy taxes on tobacco.
So acting like an independent power within Mughal territory.
Exactly. And worse, they got involved in a cruel slave trade, seizing local children, forcibly converting them to Christianity.
That sounds horrific.
Yeah.
Was there a specific trigger for the Mughal crackdown?
There was. The Portuguese seized 2 slave girls belonging to Mumtaz Mahal herself, Shah Jahan's wife. An intolerable insult to the imperial family.
Okay, that would definitely do it.
Shah Jahan ordered the Bengal governor Qasim Khan to take action. The siege of Hooghly began in June 1632.
And the result?
After 3 months, the Portuguese were routed, their power in Bengal broken. The Mughals lost about 1,000 men, but captured 400 Portuguese prisoners. Those prisoners were offered a stark choice: convert to Islam or become slaves. The intense persecution eventually eased, but the message was clear. Mughal tolerance had limits.
So that conflict with the Mughals was a major factor in their decline. What were the other overarching reasons for Portuguese decline by the 18th century?
It was a combination of things. Strained relations with the Mughals, definitely. Then the rise of the Marathas as a powerful indigenous force.
The Marathas took territory from them.
Yes, they captured Salsette and Bassein, further shrinking the Portuguese land base. Their aggressive religious policies, the conversion zeal, antagonizing Muslims also backfired, creating widespread resentment and political fear among both Hindus and Muslims.
And their reputation as pirates didn't help either, I imagine.
No, it made them enemies. Then there were external factors. The discovery of Brazil was huge. It diverted Portuguese attention, resources, manpower westward to the Americas.
They couldn't sustain both vast empires.
Exactly. And the Union of Spain and Portugal in 1580 dragged Portugal into Spain's expensive wars with England and Holland. This crippled their Indian trade monopoly as their ships became targets.
And finally, the arrival of new, more powerful competitors.
Precisely. The Dutch and the English arrived with far greater resources, better organization through their East India companies, and stronger navies. Portugal just couldn't compete long term. They lost possessions one by one. Even Goa lost some strategic importance after the fall of Vijayanagar, their key trading partner. But despite this decline, their social, economic, and cultural impact, especially on the West Coast, was immense and lasting.
Okay, so the Portuguese decline opened the door. Who stepped in next?
The Dutch challenge, right?
They arrived around 1605.
Yes, the Dutch were the first major power to seriously challenge the Portuguese monopoly. Their Dutch East India Company, formed in 1602, was incredibly powerful.
More than just a trading company.
Much more. It was empowered by the Dutch government to wage war, make treaties, own territory, build forts, almost like a state within a state.
And they expanded quickly.
Very. They captured Amboina in Indonesia from the Portuguese in 1605, grabbing control of the crucial Spice Islands. That was their main goal initially. Same year, they set up their first Indian factory at Masulipatam. Their main bases in India became Nagapattam, near Madras, and Chinsura in Bengal.
They had factories elsewhere, too.
A whole network.
Yes.
Surat, Binlapatam, Karakal, Kasimbazar, Balasore, Patna, Cochin. They effectively replaced the Portuguese in the spice trade, pepper especially. They also traded heavily in Indian silk, cotton, indigo, rice, opium, a vast commercial enterprise.
And they were the first company to issue shares. That seems revolutionary.
It really was a financial innovation that allowed them to raise huge amounts of capital, spread risk, and fund massive expeditions. A key advantage. Interestingly, their stated aim for a long time wasn't empire building in India, unlike the Portuguese or later the British. It was primarily about profitable trade.
They even minted their own coins.
They did. Established mints in places like Cochin, Masulipatam, Nagapatnam. They even issued gold pagodas from Pulicat featuring Lord Venkateswara.
Wow. Did they try to impose their own designs?
No. Cleverly, their coins were modeled on local Indian coinage to ensure they were easily accepted and circulated. Very pragmatic. But their focus remained largely on trade and the East Indies, which eventually paved the way for the next big player.
The British ascendancy. The ones who ultimately stayed the longest, from 1608 to 1947. What drew them in?
Simple answer. The huge profits others were making. The success of the Portuguese and Dutch really fired up the ambitions of English merchants. You had early adventurers like John Mildenhall traveling overland via Persia, reaching Agra in 1603, even speaking with Emperor Akbar. The potential was clear.
Which led to the formation of the English East India Company.
Exactly. First, the Merchant Adventurers Group in 1599. Then, the big moment. December 31st, 1600, Queen Elizabeth I grants a royal charter to the Governor and Company of Merchants of London trading in the East Indies.
The English East India Company, or John Company, as it was known.
That's the one. Sir Thomas Smith was the first governor. James Lancaster commanded the first voyage on the Red Dragon. It was a joint stock company, like the Dutch, pooling resources. Initially, though, they focused on the spice trade further East Java, Sumatra deliberately avoiding direct conflict in India at first.
Learning from others' mistakes, perhaps.
Possibly. But by 1608, they made their first serious attempt to set up a factory in Surat. This required Mughal permission, of course.
So they sent Captain William Hawkins to Emperor Jahangir's court.
Yes. King James I sent Hawkins in 1608 on the ship Hector. His journey started badly captured by the Portuguese, but he escaped and made it to Agra in 1609. Hawkins had a key advantage. He spoke Turki, Jahangir's mother tongue. This impressed the emperor, who called him English Khan.
Did that help him get permission for the factory?
Initially, yes. He persuaded Jahangir, but Portuguese pressure got the permission withdrawn. Hawkins tried, but ultimately failed to secure Surat immediately.
So the Portuguese were still a major obstacle.
Very much so. In 1611, Captain Middleton got permission from local governors in Surat that still had to fight the Portuguese Navy the Battle of Bombay, a small British victory. But without the emperor's official blessing, it was precarious. Meanwhile, they did manage to establish their first actual factory down south in Masulipatam in 1611, where Mughal control was weaker.
Persistence paid off, though, didn't it?
Yeah.
The Battle of Swali Hole in 1612 sounds significant.
Absolutely pivotal. Near Surat. The Portuguese actually invaded the small English factory there. Captain Thomas Best, with just 2 ships, the Red Dragon and Hoziander, fought off and sank 4 Portuguese galleons. A stunning victory.
4 galleons against 2 ships.
Yes, a massive blow to Portuguese prestige and a clear sign of rising English naval power. And crucially, it impressed Jahangir.
Seeing the English beat the established Portuguese.
Exactly, that convinced him. Jahangir finally granted official permission for an English factory at Surat under Thomas Aldworth in 1613, their first factory within the Mughal Empire proper. A huge step.
And then Sir Thomas Roe arrives in 1615 as ambassador. What was his mission?
To solidify things. He stayed at Jahangir's court until 1618, using diplomacy, not just force. He secured crucial privileges, permission for factories in major centers like Agra, Ahmedabad, Barak, and he got a royal farman, an official decree.
What did the farman grant?
It sanctioned English trade at Surat on favorable terms, giving their factory legal authority on a permanent basis. No more relying on local whims. They quickly set up a branch in Mausoleepatnam too. Conditions in the south remained easier, less direct imperial control.
But they still had the Dutch to contend with, right? That rivalry sounds intense.
Oh, incredibly intense, especially over the spice trade. It led to horrific events like the Amboina Massacre in 1623.
Where the Dutch killed English traders.
Yes, 10 Englishmen, plus Japanese and Portuguese, on Ambon Island in Indonesia. A brutal incident that caused deep resentment for decades.
Did they ever resolve these tensions?
Eventually, sort of. In 1667, they reached an agreement. The British basically pull out of Indonesia, conceding the Spice Islands to the Dutch, while the Dutch largely step back from India, a trade-off of spheres of influence.
But the conflict wasn't entirely over.
No, the Anglo-Dutch War, 1672-74, saw more fighting. But the decisive blow came much later. The Battle of Badara in Bengal, 1759. The English crushed the Dutch there, effectively ending Dutch power in India and leaving the field clear for Britain. The Dutch presence lingered until 1825, but their influence faded rapidly after Badara.
So as British influence grew, the company's own powers expanded dramatically too. It wasn't just about trade anymore.
Not at all. By 1625, they had judicial powers. By 1661, they could send warships and soldiers to defend their settlements.
And by 1683,
they got the authority to declare war, make peace, raise their own army. They were transforming into a state-like entity. By the 1680s, their goal was explicit. Secure British dominion in India, a huge shift from just trading.
Which inevitably led to conflict with Aurangzeb, the Mughal emperor.
Yes. In 1688, the English boldly captured Hooghly and declared war on Aurangzeb, a major miscalculation.
They weren't strong enough yet.
Not even close. They were soundly defeated by the Mughals, had to come back, apologize, sign treaties, pay a hefty compensation of 1.5 lakh rupees. Aurangzeb pardoned them, but made it clear who was boss.
A setback, but they kept expanding elsewhere, particularly in the south and east.
Absolutely. The Golden Farman from the Sultan of Golconda in 1632 gave them duty-free trade there, a huge boon. By 1633, factories popped up in Harry Harper and Balasore in Orissa. Then, 1639, Francis Day gets permission to build a fortified factory in Madras.
Fort St. George.
The very same. It replaced Masulipatam as their southern HQ, became their first real territorial possession, the first presidency. Later, they bought Fort St. David nearby.
And Bombay. That came via Portugal, didn't it?
Yes, in 1662. Part of the dowry when King Charles II married Catherine of Braganza. Gerald Ongure was its first governor. Its amazing natural harbor meant it eventually replaced Surat as the main western HQ in 1687. Crucial acquisition.
They were also pushing hard into Bengal. Seemed like a key target.
The immensely rich province. In 1651, the local governor, Shah Shuja, let them trade for a tiny annual fee of 3,000 rupees.
A bargain.
Unbelievable. They quickly set up factories in Hooghly, Qasim Bazar, Patna. By 1667, they got an official farman from Aurangzeb himself for Bengal trade. Then Job Charnock establishes a factory at Sutanadi in 1690. That gets fortified, becomes Fort William by 1700.
And they got Dastak's free trade passes.
Yes, from the Bengal governor in 1691. Then in 1698, they acquired zamindari rights, landlord rights, over 3 villages, Sutanadi, Kalikata, and Govindpur.
Which became
Calcutta. By 1700, Fort William in Calcutta was the seat of their eastern presidency. They were deeply entrenched in Bengal's economy and politics. And then came perhaps the most significant legal boost they received. The Farrukhshiar Farman of 1717. This is often called the company's Magna Carta.
Why was it so important? How did they get it?
An English mission led by John Sermon went to Emperor Farrukhshiar's court in 1714, the key. An English surgeon, William Hamilton, cured the emperor of a painful disease.
Ah, the grateful patient.
Exactly. In gratitude, Ferrikshiar issued 3 farmans in 1717, granting incredible privileges in Bengal, Gujarat, and Hyderabad. Hugely valuable concessions. Now, calling it the Magna Carta is slightly misleading in one sense.
How so?
Because while it was a powerful imperial decree, the reality on the ground was complex. Powerful local rulers, like the Nawabs of Bengal, often just ignored it. They knew the emperor's power was weakening.
So the real significance was exploiting that gap between imperial decree and local power.
You've hit it. The British became masters at navigating that fragmented power structure. But the farman did provide crucial legal cover and immense economic advantages.
What were the key provisions? What did it actually give them?
Okay, first, the right to trade across the entire Mughal Empire for a yearly payment of just 3,000 rupees. Peanuts, really. Second, the right to issue dastaks, those duty-free passes for goods. A massive commercial edge, though technically company servants trading privately were still meant to pay taxes.
A rule often broken, I bet.
Frequently abused, yes. Created huge friction later. Third, totally duty-free trade in Bengal. Fourth, retained duty-free rights in Hyderabad. Fifth, only paid existing rent in Madras. Sixth, in Surat, exempted from all dues for a flat 10,000 rupees. Seventh, company coins minted in Bombay were granted currency throughout the Mughal Empire. Huge legitimacy boost.
And they could rent more land around Bombay.
Yes. All these provisions together gave them an unshakable legal and economic platform for expansion, even if local rulers resisted implementation.
These expanding rights and ambitions, plus Mughal decline, set the stage for those decisive inter-European rivalries, the Anglo-French conflicts especially.
Exactly. From 1744 to 1764, Britain and France fought proxy wars across the globe, and India was a key theater. The outcomes here were critical.
Like the Battle of Plassey in 1757.
Monumental. The British defeat of Siraj-ud-Dowlah, the Nawab of Bengal, widely seen as the start of the British Empire in India, shifting them from traders to rulers.
Then Badara in 1759 knocks out the Dutch.
Yep, consolidating their hold on Bengal. And then the Battle of Wandiwash in 1760.
The final blow to the French.
In South India, yes, a decisive British victory. These weren't just battles, they determined who would dominate the subcontinent. The path was clear for British supremacy.
Now, while the British rise is the main story, we shouldn't forget the lesser-known European players, like the Danes. They had a different approach, didn't they?
They did. The Danish East India Company started in 1616. Factories in Tranquebar and Tanjore in Tamil Nadu by 1620. Their main settlement became Serampore, near Calcutta, but they were known more for missionary work and cultural activities than for aggressive commerce. A real contrast.
Where were their colonies?
Tranquebar, Anangambadi, Serampore, and the Nicobar Islands. They founded Serampore as Frederick-Ngor in 1755, but their company struggled financially. By the 1770s, it was bankrupt, and Serampore transferred to the Danish crown. It became famous for its missionaries' educational work. Eventually, Denmark sold Serampore to Britain in 1845.
And their architecture. There's
Wow.
much left.
Quite a bit, especially in Tranquebar, Anangambadi. That was their main base for over 200 years. Their town planning was very European squares, canals. You can still see the old town gate, the Danish fort, Dansburg, the New Jerusalem church. Tangible remnants.
But their biggest impact might have been through individuals like Bartholomew Suthigenbalg.
Absolutely. The first Protestant missionary in India, sent by the Danish king, arrived in Tranquebar in 1707. What's remarkable is his dedication to local culture. He learned Tamil by attending village schools, sitting with children. Didn't just impose his language.
That's unusual for the time.
Very. He set up a Tamil seminary, preached in Tamil. He even got a German university interested in studying Tamil academically.
And he translated the Bible into Tamil.
A monumental achievement completed in 1715. He also helped set up India's first printing press in Tranquebar, and Tamil was the first Indian language printed.
Wow. Printing press and first printed Indian language. That's huge.
Huge. Plus, he championed women's education, started the first girls' school in India in 1707, and advocated against the caste system, earned a lot of local respect. He helped build the New Jerusalem church for locals with services in Tamil, died young in 1719, but his legacy in education and cultural exchange is profound, a different kind of European influence.
Definitely a fascinating counterpoint. Now, going back to the Portuguese, despite their decline, their enduring influences are significant, aren't they? Beyond just trade routes.
Oh, undeniably. Their impact was deep and varied. They enriched Indian languages with new words, contributed to medical science, Garcia de Orta's treatise on Indian medicinal plants was groundbreaking. They introduced printing, as Ziegenbalg later utilized, and set up seminaries for Indian priests, fostering local Christian leadership.
What about technology or architecture?
Their advanced ship designs were adapted by Indian builders. Their church architecture, especially in the Deccan, left a clear mark. The ornate Manueline style, with its nautical themes, became popular on the West Coast. Goa became a center for skilled silversmiths and goldsmiths, known for intricate filigree work and embedding jewels, blending European and Indian aesthetics.
And administratively or economically?
They introduced formal structures like the Viceroy and Vidor de Fazenda. Economically, beyond trade, they introduced the printing press and those vital new cash crops, cashews, tobacco. Militarily, they brought new tactics, gunboat diplomacy, multi-deck ships with cannons, body armor. They changed the nature of warfare in the region.
And social reforms like abolishing sati.
Yes, in their territories. Plus, they fostered that unique Indo-Portuguese culture, especially visible in Goa today.
Let's touch on Portuguese architecture more specifically, the Iberian style.
Yes, the style from Spain and Portugal. Their settlements evolved from warehouses to fortified towns. They introduced patio houses and the dramatic Baroque style.
Baroque, the very ornate theatrical style used in churches.
Exactly. Developed in Europe to express church power and grandeur. Exaggerated motion, detail, drama, often using contrasting colors, meant to awe and impress.
Any specific examples still standing?
The Bassein Fort, Fesse Fort, is impressive, with its Corinthian pillars and sea gate, and the Dieu Fort, built in 1535, with its lighthouse, cannons, and 3 churches inside St. Thomas, St. Paul, St. Francis of Assisi, all showing Baroque elements.
And finally, no discussion of Portuguese influence is complete without Francis Xavier.
Indeed. A Navarrese Catholic missionary, co-founder of the Jesuits. Hugely influential in evangelizing within the Portuguese Empire, especially India, arriving in Goa in 1542. He was the one who actually proposed the Goa Inquisition to the Portuguese king, seeking a dedicated minister to promote Christianity, which sadly had very dark consequences later.
He traveled widely, though, didn't he?
It's extensively. Japan, Borneo, the Maluku Islands, less success there due to language barriers. He died just as he was planning to go to China, considered one of the greatest missionaries ever. His body's journey after death was remarkable, eventually ending up in the Basilica of Bom Jesus in Goa, where it remains a major pilgrimage site.
What an incredible journey we've taken today. From those first Portuguese voyages, driven by gold, God, and glory, through their rise and fall. Then the Dutch challenge, the relentless British ascent, eliminating rivals in key battles like Plassey, Badara, and Wandiwash, and not forgetting the unique legacy of the Danes in culture and education. These early encounters truly laid the foundations for centuries of Indian history, didn't they? Shaping trade, politics, culture, everything.
They absolutely set the stage. The strategies, the alliances, the technologies introduced, the administrative systems, they all played a part in the much larger colonial story that followed.
The echoes are still there today, reminding us how ambition, innovation, and conflict in one era can reshape the world for generations to come.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Right.
How do these initial strategies and power dynamics foreshadow the vast colonial structures that would later dominate India? Understanding these beginnings is key to understanding the whole sweep of modern Indian history. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it sparked your curiosity to explore more. Until next time, keep digging deeper, keep asking questions, and keep exploring the fascinating world around you.
Absolutely. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the foundations of modern Indian history, please do hit that like button, subscribe to PodX Studio if you haven't already, and definitely ring that notification bell icon so you don't miss our next historical journey. Stay tuned.